Hey there, friends. Pastor Jason here. Glad you can join me for daily devotionals. Today we are in Numbers 19 and 20, and we're going to jump right in. We're going to see another ordinance given, and then we're going to see the death of Aaron. So, chapter 19, verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron. This is the legal statute that the Lord commanded. Instruct the Israelites to bring you an unblemished red cow that has no defect and has never been yoked. Give it to Eleazar the priest, and he will have it brought outside the camp and slaughtered in his presence. Eleazar the priest is to take some of its blood with his finger and sprinkle it 7 times toward the front of the tent of meeting. The cow must be burned in his sight. Its hide, flesh, and blood are to be burned along with its dung. The priest is to take cedar wood, hyssop, crimson yarn, and throw them onto the fire where the cow is burning. Then the priest must wash his clothes and bathe his body in water. After that he may enter the camp, but he will remain ceremonially unclean until evening. The one who burned the cow must also wash his clothes and bathe his body in water, and he will remain unclean until evening. The man who is clean is to gather up the cow's ashes and deposit them outside the camp in a ceremonially clean place. The ashes must be kept by the Israelite community for preparing the water to remove impurity. It is a sin offering. Then the one who gathers up the cow's ashes must wash his clothes, and he will remain unclean until evening. This is a permanent statute for the Israelites and for the foreigner who resides among them. The person who touches any human corpse will be unclean for 7 days. He is to pure himself with the water on the 3rd day and the 7th day. Then he will be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd and 7th days, he will not be clean. Anyone who touches a body of a person who has died or does not purify himself defiles the tabernacle of the Lord. That person will be cut off from Israel. He remains unclean because the water for impurity has not been sprinkled on him, and his uncleanness is still on him. This is the law when a person dies in a tent. Everyone who enters the tent and everyone who is already in the tent will be unclean for 7 days. And any open container without a lid tied on it is unclean. Anyone in an open field who touches a person who has been killed by the sword or has died or even touches a human bone or grave will be unclean for 7 days. For the purification of the unclean person, they are to take some of the ashes of the burnt sin offering, put them in a jar, and add fresh water to them. A person who is clean is to take hyssop, dip it in the water, and sprinkle it on the tent, all the furnishings, and the people who were there. He is also to sprinkle the one who touched a bone, a grave, a corpse, or a person who has been killed. The one who is clean is to sprinkle the unclean person on the 3rd and 7th day. After he purifies the unclean person on the 7th day, the one being purified must wash his clothes and bathe in water, and he will be clean by evening. But a person who is unclean and does not purify himself, that person will be cut off from the assembly because he defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water for impurity has not been sprinkled on him. He is unclean. This is a permanent statute for them. The person who sprinkles the water for impurity is to wash his clothes, and whoever touches the water for impurity will be unclean until evening. Anything the unclean person touches will become unclean, and anyone who touches it will be unclean until evening. Chapter 20. The entire Israelite community entered the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and they settled in Kadesh. Miriam died and was buried there. For context, again, Miriam is Moses and Aaron's older sister, and she died at the age of 126. There was no water for the community, so they assembled against Moses and Aaron. The people quarreled with Moses and said, "If we only had perished when our brothers perished before the Lord, why have you brought the Lord's assembly into the wilderness for us and our livestock to die here? Why have you led us up from Egypt to bring us to this evil place? It's not a place of grain, figs, vines, and pomegranates, and there's no water to drink." Then Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the doorway of the tent of meeting. They fell down with their faces to the ground, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Take the staff and assemble the community. You and your brother Aaron are to speak to the rock while they watch, and it will yield its water. You will bring out water for them from the rock and provide drink for the community and their livestock." So Moses took the staff from the Lord's presence, just as he had commanded him. Moses and Aaron summoned the assembly in front of the rock, and Moses said to them, "Listen, you rebels, must we bring water out of this rock for you?" Then Moses raised his hand and struck the rock twice with his staff, so that a great amount of water gushed out, and the community and their livestock drank. But the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, "Because you did not trust me to show my holiness in the sight of the Israelites, you will not bring this assembly into the land I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the Israelites quarreled with the Lord, and he showed his holiness to them." Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to king of Edom. "This is what your brother Israel says. You know all the hardships that have overtaken us. Our fathers went down to Egypt, and we lived in Egypt many years, but the Egyptians treated us and our fathers badly. When we cried out to the Lord, he heard our voice, sent an angel, and brought us out of Egypt. Now look, we are in Kadesh, a city on the border of your territory. Please let us travel through your land. We won't travel through any field or vineyard or drink any well water. We will travel the king's highway. We won't turn to the right or left until we have traveled through your territory." But Edom answered him, "You must not travel through our land, or we will come out and confront you with the sword." "We will go on the main road," the Israelites replied to them, "and if we or our herds drink your water, we will pay its price. There will be no problem. Only let us travel through on foot." Yet Edom insisted, "You must not travel through." And they came out to confront them with a large force of heavily armed people. Edom refused to allow Israel to travel through their territory, and Israel turned away from them. After they set out from Kadesh, the entire Israelite community came to the Mount Hor. The Lord said to Moses and Aaron at Mount Hor on the border of the land of Edom, "Aaron will be gathered to his people. He will not enter the land I have given the Israelites, because you both rebelled against my command at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and his son Eleazar and bring them up Mount Hor. Remove Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar. Aaron will be gathered to his people and die there." So Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they climbed Mount Hor in sight of the whole community. After Moses removed Aaron's garments and put them on his son Eleazar, Aaron died there on top of the mountain. Then Moses and Eleazar came down from the mountain. When the whole community saw that Aaron had passed away, the entire house of Israel mourned him 30 days. Oh man, 19 and 20, we get the idea here in 19, God preparing for them, like they're going to be dealing with dead bodies for sure. They're going to be in the wilderness. They're going to be dealing with people who have died in the wilderness or maybe die in their tent. And there's this idea of bringing to Eleazar, hopefully you saw that kind of connection, Eleazar being the priest who's going to succeed Aaron. Take that red cow outside the city, sort of like Jesus was sacrificed. And then they make the water for impurity, that water for cleansing someone who's touched a dead body. So, again, Christ is our water of life, isn't he? He is our eternal water and wellspring of life. And he cleanses our touching our dead bodies to be holy and right with him. He is our living water, right? And then we get to chapter 20 and the death of Aaron. Now, first off, we saw the death of Miriam as well. Again, she's the older sister. She dies at 126. They come to the land of Edom. That's where Esau had settled. Remember, and so that's significant. Go back, read that back in Genesis. And then here Aaron dies. Aaron dies at the age of 123 for context. And Eleazar becomes the next leader of the Levites. And the people mourn them, right? We mourn when people pass on, and yet we are still meant to do what the Lord has commanded us to do as well. And maybe, did you hear the Israelites' rebellion? They complain. They complain why? How do they complain? It's not a place of figs or grain or vines or pomegranates, all the things that the promised land was supposed to be. And then they weren't allowed to go in because they didn't believe the Lord. And so now they want what was promised, even though they didn't believe first. And then you get the whole idea, maybe you're wondering, how did Moses and Aaron not believe? They were just supposed to stand there and speak to the rock, and the water was going to come out. And yet Moses, in his anger and frustration with the Israelites, strikes the rock instead. It's important for all of us to make sure we're doing what the Lord has commanded us to do, and to do so well with integrity and the way we were commanded to do it. Hey, I hope chapters 19 and 20 are a blessing to you. I hope that you are able to suss out what the Lord is calling you to do, how, maybe you need that clean water from the Lord that purifies us, that makes us holy. Remember, he is sacrificed outside the camp, outside the city. Let us go to him outside the camp, meet him, be blessed by him and his sacrifice for us. Be blessed, be a blessing. I'll see you tomorrow as we continue in Numbers.